What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today we'll be going over the players who have risen and fallen the most over the last week or so in terms of ADP, and also some of the latest news out of camp since those are finally starting back up. A few things before we start. You can now see ADP movement on that same tab on our website. Again, completely free for everyone to use. It has Underdog, FFPC, ESPN, Yahoo, NFL. Before, it only showed the ADP. Now it's going to show movement over about the last week. I'm going to probably update that weekly. And also, ESPN, Yahoo, and NFL now have the rankings. So that's basically, if you were to enter a draft, let's say on ESPN, the site's now going to tell you what the ranking is because that's what ESPN sorts by. You guys complained you don't like ADP. Sure, whatever. I changed it to the ranking now, so hopefully you guys like that as well. And then, of course, Underdog and FFPC are going to remain ADPs. Also, another bit of news. The rankings have been changed, and now on the website they've been updated. Before we had PPR, half PPR standard, and then PPR for Superflex. We now have half PPR Superflex up, standard Superflex is up, and 1.5 points per reception for tight end. Those rankings are all up. So a bunch of rankings now available on the site. I will be working on 6-point passing touchdown as well. No promises on exactly when that's going to be out because it does take a little bit of time to build that in because, of course, I need 3 new rankings pages for that, but that'll be coming as well. So that is it for some updates. Let's start things off as usual, the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was who was the youngest running back last season to have 30 fantasy points or more in at least 1 week last season. The answer is Jonathan Taylor. Trip Uglum was the first to get that on YouTube, and at JCEnglish11 was the first to get that right on Twitter. Today's stat, very similar, is who was the youngest wide receiver to have 35 PPR points or more in at least 1 week last season. All right, so probably the biggest bit of news, I guess you could say that the Michael Thomas and the Cam Akers injuries, or I guess the recovery from injury for Michael Thomas and the injury to Cam Akers are the biggest bits of news. But we will go over Michael Thomas first because it has an impact on a ton of players. We're seeing movement across the entire Saints roster. Michael Thomas has dropped down to the 4th pick in the 4th round, but the news is so new that we need to see the market react for another week, maybe even another 2 or 3 weeks before we fully know where people are going to be taking him. And also, it depends on what more news we get. First initial report that comes out says he's expected to miss 8 to 12 weeks following ankle surgery in June. Then another report comes out and that says actually it's going to be 6 to 8 weeks to heal, then another 6 to 8 weeks to get back into shape. No matter what, dude's missing the first couple weeks of the season, but we don't know exactly how many weeks he's going to miss. I think it's definitely possible that he just misses until week 7 because they have the bye in week 6. Because think about it, if you're the Saints, are you going to rush him back for week 5 knowing that you go on bye the next week and that if you just wait 1 more week, he'll be good to go in week 7? I just don't see the Saints doing that. They've waited this long. This is their best player for wide receiver, for tight end. Probably one of the top 3 players on their team among all positions. So you got to think that they're going to be careful with him. And that means he could come back in week 7. So we're going to see his ADP drop even further. Right now, I have him ranked as a late 7th round pick because I'm anticipating him missing 6 weeks of the fantasy season at a minimum. And so obviously, you're going to lose out on someone that valuable. You can't be taking him, even in the 4th round. So the only way I see that going up is if we get more positive news that comes out and they're no, it's actually going to be week 2 or week 3 he's going to be back. Well, yeah, then I'll raise him in the rankings. But until we get that news, I'm dropping him way down, and I'm probably just not taking him at all because I doubt he even makes it that far in drafts. Another situation this affects is Alvin Kamara. Obviously, he increases in value, but he was already going so high that he actually moves the least of anyone on this team, right? Because he was already being taken 4th overall. I mean, what now? Maybe you move him up to 3rd. Maybe he jumps over Derrick Henry in certain formats, but realistically, he can only move up 1, maybe 2 spots if you want to move him over Dalvin Cook as well. But Kamara was a great pick. Now he's a great pick. nothing's really changing there. Traquan Smith has seen his ADP rise a decent amount up into like the mid 12th round. I think that's still a little bit aggressive. Like, I like Traquan Smith as a player, but you got to also understand that they're going to have a rotation of like Taysom Hill and Winston. And it's like, Traquan's good, but he's not Michael Thomas. He's clearly not a number one NFL wide receiver. And if he's facing, top coverage from NFL corners, and I just don't see it. I don't really see why you would want to go out and pay a really high price tag for Traquan, because there's still other great wide receivers in that range. So I still have him, I believe, as like a 15th round pick. I just will probably not get him now at his elevated ADP, because then again, we're saying that Michael Thomas is going to start dropping more. Well, Traquan is going to keep going up, because people are going to be like, oh, well, who's the number one now? They're going to see Traquan, they're going to start taking him in the 11th, and then they'll reach him to the 10th, and like his ADP is going to continue to rise. I'm out on that. We have seen Winston's ADP drop. That's a combination of like, Michael Thomas is gone, right? Or at least for a little bit of time. And so I don't care who the quarterback is. You lose your clear number one receiver, you're less valuable as a quarterback because you're just not going to perform as well. There's also more news coming out that it's like, we don't know who the quarterback's going to be. Again, I started the offseason basically saying that I think Taysom Hill is going to be the quarterback. It does seem like most reports are saying that no, Winston will probably be the quarterback. Hill will probably be like what he has been in the past, a situational guy, someone they bring in for design plays, someone they bring in the red zone. But regardless, it's like I would never trust Winston as a quarterback this season. And like Taysom Hill would be good if he is confirmed the starter, but his ADP is also going to skyrocket if he's confirmed the starter. So realistically, not a ton of news there. Adam Troutman has seen his ADP rise, and that should absolutely happen. That's the biggest one I'm excited about. Obviously, I'm excited for Alvin Kamara to post like 30 fantasy points a week while Michael Thomas is out. But Troutman, he's a guy that we've liked all summer. We like how much they gave up in trading up to get him last season, how talented he is, how much they could use him in the receiving game, and now how much they need to use him in the receiving game. So he's up to a late 11th round pick. I think that is perfectly fine. If you want to grab tight end in that range, I think Troutman is a really, really nice sleeper pick. So that's kind of it for the Saints. Then, of course, this next bit of news has to be the Cam Akers injury. He will miss the entire season. We've been waiting to see where will Darrell Henderson's ADP go up to, where will he fall in my rankings, because obviously his projection is going to increase initially. And again, I put out an update for me last night, for you guys like 2 nights ago, huge update. Now I'm going to adjust from there. I personally think Henderson is a tad too high in my initial run of projections. I have him as like a mid 4th round pick. If you look at drafts that happened after the Akers injury, because of course ADPs take time to adjust, and people are definitely in like slow drafts right now where Akers is still being taken. Henderson, like maybe they're in the 6th round of a slow draft, like Henderson can only be in the 6th round, right? So we need to see. Early indications are that Henderson is going in the 5th round. I think that's correct. I think that's kind of where he should be going. If he is going to go in the 4th round, I do think it's a tad early. So like when I'm done this video, probably when you guys are watching the video, I've probably moved Henderson's ADP back into the 5th round, or I guess his ranking back into the 5th round. I just think like under our general draft strategy that we've been going with this offseason, it's just not a guy we're going to end up with, because we've been hammering running back early, maybe grabbing a tight end as well. And when we get in the 5th round, we're looking at quarterback, we're looking at these high upside wide receivers. We're not really looking at these running backs that have so many question marks. Because if you told me Henderson was getting 17 touches a week, of course I'd love him in that range. But I don't know that that's going to happen. I know that McVay comes out and he's like, yeah, we looked at the free agency market for some veterans and like we don't love what we see, basically, is what he said. So we're probably not going to go with that route. That's totally fine. And I kind of believe him when they talk about that. But they can still trade. Someone could still get cut that they weren't expecting to get cut and add them. Right? They're not going to be like, oh, well, we're expecting Swinney Michel to get cut and we'll probably add him. Like, they're not going to come out and say that, right? They can think it internally. They're not going to say it. And so I still do not believe the current roster is what they're going to end up with in week 1. And that's what projections have to assume right now, because you can't just guess that someone else is going to go there. You have to give the touches to someone. So I personally am probably not drafting Henderson in the 4th round, probably not drafting him in the 5th round. If he falls into the 6th, into the 7th round, it's a different conversation because the opportunity cost starts to get significantly less every round you go into. But for me, I do think that until they make a move, he's going to be going too early in drafts, and so I'm probably not going to take him. One thing I did see, I think Robert Woods went up 1 spot in ADP, Kupp went up 1 spot, then Stafford went down a spot. I don't think Stafford should decrease. Like, obviously, their offense is going to be slightly worse now that they don't have Akers because he is better than Henderson. He was going to provide more of a threat on the ground. But even if the offense is slightly worse, Stafford might be forced to throw the ball more because they're not ever going to give Henderson as many carries as they were going to give Akers. And it's like, for fantasy, that might not matter because we prefer the targets anyways. But for fantasy, for Stafford, it does matter because obviously they're not going to give Akers all those carries. But if they're giving him the targets, we're getting extra points from Stafford. So even if the offense is slightly worse, if he's throwing more, well, that's a benefit to Stafford. So I don't think his ADP should drop after this injury. Maybe it was just randomness. It just dropped like, I think it was like 1.5 in ADP, but you guys can check on the website. But it didn't drop that much. It did drop, and it probably shouldn't. I think people are a little bit overreacting there and not fully understanding that, like, they're not going to go with a ground-based attack now for sure. Probably going to throw it a lot, and his ADP should probably increase instead. Jalen Hurts' ADP has dropped into the mid-8th round. I think people are kind of catching on that it's like there could be a move here. I don't know why, but Watson was not placed on the commissioner's exempt list, and so we have no idea what's fully going to work out. Basically, right now, Houston is asking for 3 first-round picks, so a very, very steep price tag. You know, not every team can afford to do that or wants to do that for a quarterback. Latest reports are that the Eagles are like the number 1 team looking for Watson. And so, yeah, Jalen Hurts' ADP should drop because he'll be completely worthless if Watson becomes the quarterback. We've had Hurts dropped a lot in the rankings for probably the last like 2 months, maybe a month or two. So like even right now with that drop in the 8th round, if you follow the rankings, there's no way you're going to end up with Jalen Hurts. I liked him to start the off season because it seemed like they were invested in him and he's a mobile quarterback. But until I'm like 100% sure that he's going to be the starting quarterback, there's just no way I'm spending an 8th round pick on him. So for me, Hurts is a no. Cohen's ADP is dropping a lot. Obviously, I think it's in like the 19th round right now. I'm getting vibes of like McKinnon. You remember McKinnon, was that 2 years ago? When it was like people were just assuming he was going to be 100%. And we were like, well, no, we don't know 100%. And then he like didn't even play like all season because he just could not recover. I mean, I don't think that should be our assumption, is that Cohen's not going to recover. But our assumption should be we don't know, but there's a lot of risk. And it's seeming like he could not even start the season. Yeah, I mean, especially if you're not in a PPR format, there's no real reason to be drafting Cohen. If he goes, he's going to go really late or maybe not at all, and then you can just grab him on free agency if you really wanted to. But he's not a player we draft because there's just no real path to him starting for your championship team, and that's what we want, is to win a championship. So why would we draft Tree Cohen? Obviously, this is a boost up for David Montgomery, as the only thing people can really point to for why you shouldn't draft Montgomery is Cohen if he's not even going to be there. And he was just the running back. I don't remember exactly what it was. It was around like the running back 4 from like week 5 on last season. I think that's what it was. Like, he was dominant last season. I know we've done a video on this. It's partly schedule. It's partly Cohen being out. But if Cohen's still out, it's not like this offense is going to be horrible when they face an average defense, right? Like, yes, they had really bad defenses to face last season, but they should be a little bit better under Fields when they finally make that transition. I don't see why his ADP isn't already in the 3rd round. I fully expect David Montgomery to cost a 3rd round pick come like mid to late August. Right now, he's risen into the mid 4th, but it's still not early enough. And so I think you should be taking him in the 3rd round. I think my projections right now have him as the 11th pick in the 2nd round. And so you don't need to take him that early because you could probably take him at any point in the third round. But that's how valuable he is according to my projections right now. Those are kind of it for the ADP risers and fallers, so where we've actually seen players change. Now I'm going to go over a little bit of news from training camp, and this is probably going to affect ADPs in the future. So these things will probably change ADPs, in the next week, and we might be talking about them next week. I don't really know if I'm going to do this video every week. I probably won't be doing it, but when we talk about it again, these might be players that we talk about in the future. So Marlon Mack and Paris Campbell are both 100%. I definitely want to follow the news on Marlon Mack because, yes, Jonathan Taylor is obviously still the guy, but if Mack is 100% and they're going to use him, and they're also going to use Nyheim Hines, it's not like they don't have to use them that much to where it's like Jonathan Taylor's a good pick, but not a good pick in the middle of the second or the middle of the first round, right? Like if they're going to use Mack and Hines a decent amount, now you have to bump down Jonathan Taylor into the late first round. So I want to follow this news definitely. I'm staying where I'm at right now and that Jonathan Taylor is worth a mid-first round pick because I do believe they're going to feature him, but we need to follow training camp news. And also Campbell, you guys know I talk about him every single mock draft Monday. I love Paris Campbell. I think that he's a great pick in one of your final selections of the draft because he's going super, super late and he is still very, very talented. Dak has been out there with no restrictions. Everyone that's watching is saying he looks exactly the same as before the injury. You wouldn't have even known he got hurt. Lamb has been his top target. Obviously, an important note here, Jerry Jones has said that Amari Cooper will begin practicing he expects him to begin practicing after their August 13th preseason game. I expect that comment and all the hype surrounding Lamb to drop Amari Cooper's ADP. Right now, I don't really see a case for taking Cooper over Lamb. I think you pretty much have to take Lamb first. He's probably just pure talent-wise at this point in their respective careers, he probably is the more talented. And also, if Lamb's going to get all this work as the clear alpha ahead of Amari Cooper, because Cooper's not practicing, he's going to build even more chemistry with Dak. I don't know. I think Lamb has to be taken ahead of Cooper. Right now, I have Lamb as the first pick in the fourth round, Cooper as basically the last pick in the fourth round. Maybe Lamb gets up. I would say Lamb's ceiling for my rankings is the middle of the third round. That's where I could see him rising to. But especially, if we don't see Cooper until into the 20s of August, yeah, you're going to want to be getting shares of Lamb. You're definitely going to be wanting to get shares of Michael Gallup, and you're probably going to be wanting to avoid Amari Cooper. So definitely need to keep an eye on this one. We already went over the Texans, so I don't need to do that one. Although one thing, actually, Anthony Miller, so he was traded from the Bears to the Texans, but I don't really see an impact here. I still don't want to target Houston Texans pass catchers or really running backs. I'm honestly fine taking a shot late on Philip Lindsay or whoever you think emerges in that backfield. I'm not saying I think Philip Lindsay will be the one, but I think Mark Ingram gets cut. But let's say you think Mark Ingram comes out and has a large workload, he's literally free. So if you want to take him in the last round, go for it. Same thing with Lindsay. I'm not taking David Johnson because he goes too early. But other than that, I'm not taking Texans players. And so with Miller also clearly being less talented than we thought he was going to be, no, I'm not taking him. And then people saying that, this is going to impact Mooney. Well, no, I was already projecting Mooney to be the number 2. So now he's also the number 2, and now he's just going to cost even more. So I almost don't even like this because we're getting even a worse discount or a worse value. You guys know my take that I've said recently, though. You got to pick one. You got to pick a narrative in your head when you're in the draft. I think it's very unlikely that Fields comes in and he has Clement and Allen Robinson and Mooney are all super fantasy relevant. That's very difficult for a rookie to do. And so if you think Allen Robinson's clearly the one, take Allen Robinson as the one and don't be targeting Mooney late. If you think that Mooney takes a big step forward, has a large role deep, well then you should not be targeting Allen Robinson. You should be targeting Mooney late. So you got to pick whichever narrative you think is correct and go with that one because they're probably not both going to do great. Ezekiel Elliott has lost some weight. I believe the report said he's down to like 218 pounds. He said it's the lightest he's been since his freshman year of college. Well, he looked kind of slow last season, didn't look all that great, and so I guess maybe this is a good thing. And he acknowledged that, though. I mean, good on him, right? In the press conference, he was like, yeah, I mean, how much more motivation do you need than like watching what you did last season and seeing how awful it was? So he knows he was bad. We know he was bad. He's still gonna get a ton of touches. This offense, I want to be all in on. I want a ton of CeeDee Lamb. I want Dak Prescott. I want Ezekiel Elliott. I want to take Tony Pollard late if I miss out on those guys. I think it's going to be a great offense. And even if Zeke's not super efficient, he's going to get receptions. They're going to score a ton of touchdowns, and he's going to have a lot as well. So I think Zeke is still an exceptional pick. Michael Carter, we've got some Jets information. They said he's eventually going to be the 1A. So a few notes there. Eventually the 1A doesn't give me a ton of confidence because it's like, eventually he'll be the lead back of a committee. Like, it would have been better if they were like, eventually he's the 1, right? But 1A obviously indicates that it's a committee. So they're like, hopefully one day he'll be the top of a committee. So we're going to get a committee from the New York Jets, right? You're going to have a rotation of running backs. It's like not super positive news, but it's going to increase his ADP because everyone sees 1A and they're like, oh, lead back. I mean, yes, he's going to be really good in PPR leagues because of the pass catching, but again, it's best back in a committee on the Jets, and it depends on how much you trust the Jets, and it's still a committee. Okay, so you got to understand that. Right now, his ADP is the late 8th round. I do still have him ranked as a mid 7th round pick, so you can still absolutely take him, but understand that maybe to start the season, it's really, really slow, not that great, and we get a situation like Dobbins, like Jonathan Taylor, like, who was another, Swift last season, where it was like, even Akers. All these guys started off super slow, and they're all more talented than Michael Carter. So maybe Michael Carter starts off extremely slow, and that's your opportunity to buy in, not in the 8th round, right? Maybe he starts off the first month of the season averaging 5 fantasy points a week, and you can just trade him for virtually nothing instead of spending an 8th round pick on him. Sticking with the Jets, I think this one's like kind of important. The expectation right now is that Corey Davis and Keelan Cole will be the primary outside wide receivers. Then you're going to have Crowder and Elijah Moore manning the slot. And they've basically said, like, listen, obviously at 28 years old, Jameson Crowder is not the future of the Jets. They know that. Elijah Moore is a great prospect. He's had a great camp. Like, obviously, just put your thinking cap on. Like, you got to think any organization is putting Elijah Moore in the slot. I mean, like, even if he's 1% worse, we don't care because we think he's going to be better. And why would we play Crowder? Like, they're not winning a championship this season. Develop Elijah Moore. So Elijah Moore is probably going to be the primary slot receiver relatively early in the season, but it's primary slot receiver. They love Keelan Cole. And honestly, I need to add Keelan Cole to the sleepers list. I need to move him up in the rankings because everything I've read all offseason is like they think that Cole is like the steal of free agency. Like, they just love this kid. They think they should have had to pay more to him. Like, they love him. So Keelan Cole's going to be out there for sure. And if he's out there all the time on the outside with Corey Davis, well, that means also that Elijah Moore is getting fewer snaps because they're not always going to have 3 wide receivers on the field. So this is a bump down to Elijah Moore. This is a bump up to Keelan Cole. And obviously Crowder, like, I mean, unless he gets traded, you're just not drafting Jameson Crowder. So that is basically the latest updates around the league in terms of who's changing in ADP and just like some news out of camp that's going to affect ADPs in the future. Again, we have the tab on the website, so all you have to do is click the ADP tab, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. You're going to see all the rankings from different websites. You're going to see who's changing in ADP. If you want to see some of these news bits and my take on them, there's the also free trending players page. You can get some takes there. You can follow me on Twitter. That's free as well. And if you want our draft guide, you can check that out again. It's got all of my rankings. It's like 7 different rankings right now. It's going to be 10 different rankings soon. Full PPR, half PPR, standard, pretty much any format that you can think of also dynasty content. You've got your sleepers in there, your projections, your targets. It's more than enough information to have you crush your draft. So if you want to check that out, again, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But that, my friends, is the end of this one. I hope you all enjoy. If you did, then how about hitting the like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.